The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
I'm going where them dust storms never blow. I'm going where them dust storms never blow, blow, and I ain't gonna be treated this way.
Welcome to For the Love of Words. My name is Priscilla Almquist-Olsen, your co-host, and today is April 20th, 2023, and I'm so pleased to have a dear friend, a wonderful musician, and a really great guy with me tonight. Many of you know Dave Spagone. You've seen him at the Shoveltown Brewery on open mic night. You've been in a home where somebody had a 50th birthday party and he's the main attraction. So he does a lot of gigs, and he's well known not just in Easton where he grew up, but also in the surrounding area. So keep in mind, if you need a gig, you need someone to do a gig, he is the best gig person you ever want to meet. Or do we say gigster?
We don't say that, but I'm for hire. I play a lot of classic music, and sometimes right here in the studio.
Yes, you do. And tonight you're here because you're also a songwriter. So not only do you write the words, but those words are accompanied by your playing, either the guitar or the keyboard. And I see tonight you've brought your guitar.
I did.
So we're going to have a performance after this short interview. And I've interviewed you several times before, but let's go over the reason that you are so musically inclined and why. There are only five boys in the family, and you're one of them, and they're all musicians.
Everyone's a little musically inclined.
And how did that happen?
I'm not sure how it happened, but I don't know. There was just always music going on, and I'm the second to youngest, and my older brothers always were, if they weren't playing records, they were strumming guitars or playing a piano, which we had in the house. My parents weren't especially musical, but they certainly nurtured music lessons and loud record playing, and it probably came from there.
And with five boys, it must have been quite a cacophony.
Well, I come from a pretty loud Italian family anyway, so even if it wasn't music, there was a cacophony. But yeah, we just again just music crazed. I was born in 1970, so when I was a little kid, it was the golden age of rock and album rock, and we lived in Brockton at that time, and in that neighborhood, all the kids. I've said it on your shows before. You argued about your favorite bands. It was a big deal, and everyone just loved rock and roll and all its offshoots and all its all the things that preceded it, like blues and folk rock and things like that.
So, what of the groups that you argued about and you defended? Which groups have impacted your own music and songwriting?
Well, it sounds all cliche and all, but I was a big Beatles fan, Beatles and Stones and The Who, on other shows on here, my brother and I have gone on about it ad nauseum, but, a lot of classic rock, but I always wanted to delve deeper. So when I was a big Rolling Stones fan, you'd read about the people that influenced them. And all the blues and jazz players and early rock and roll. And so I tended to research and go back and kind of go to the source. And when I heard blues and early jazz and things like that, I was transformed.
Right. So I understand that blues and jazz are very fundamental to your creative process, I think. And does that go for the lyrics also?
Without question, I would say, because as you'll see shortly in my performance, I'm not, they're music words. They're definitely influenced by the simplicity and straightforwardness of of the blues and things like that. But I'm also a huge fan of musical poets like Bob Dylan and John Lennon, and those are those are some of Ray Davies. Those are some of my just some good. I guess they call it pop lyrics, but they were a little deeper than that. I think at that in that time period.
So how do you get an idea? How do ideas pop into your head for the words of a song?
A few different ways. Sometimes literally you might wake up and have a phrase or something in your head, like I used to say, "Oh, I heard it in a dream," but it's just sort of, I don't know, early morning tends to be I think that's a proven thing scientifically. Your creative juices flow a little
Don't you think
more
it's
robustly. I don't know if that's it, but I find that in the morning, it's like when I wake up, I've got something in my head that's not necessarily in existence.
Well, they say that most creative people dream every night. So is it possible that that creative posture that you have in the morning is a direct result of your dreaming at night?
I've definitely written songs from melodies in my head that emanated from dreams. Dreams. So that's that's certainly happened. But it's funny to talk about songwriting sometimes, because to me it's just like my songwriting started, and I guess comes from this. Ever since I was young, it came out of necessity. I had a working, little band, back in the late 1980s when I was a teenager. That's teenagers had bands. They don't do that much anymore. But they started. So I had a band, an actual working band, and we needed material. So I started writing it. No one else was really coming to the table with full songs, and so I did. Back then, they were based on some of the rock and roll I liked, like The Band. The Band. I really liked those records, and I felt like it went back to the basics. It was a little bit of folk, a little bit of blues, a little bit of Americana in there, and
So
that's where the early songwriting came from. Neil Young too.
God rest him. Do you see that those elements are generally in your words?
The elements, I think, in my words, in the words I use in my songs, it's sometimes people say, "Hey, what does that song mean?" And it doesn't always mean something. I think it's certainly, I don't know what the word is that I'm looking, a little bit abstract. Again, Bob Dylan, John Lennon are big lyrical influences of mine. So they're not, real story songs. They're kind of, I think I said to you once after one of the performances on here, you were like, "That was great. Where'd you get the idea for those lyrics?" And I said, Priscilla, they're just a placeholder for, for the music. And they're kind of, my lyrics are functional.
So
But I like them. It's
So
there's a little wordsmithery involved in fitting the right ones in.
So most of the time, people write music and then they fit the words to the music. But sometimes that's not always the case.
Both happen. Without question, both.
Right.
Both ways. Things happen different ways.
So you have the lyrics, and then so you're really a poet, and then you find the notes to match the words.
Sometimes if a phrase or a few lines, I like, I don't read a ton of poetry, but I read Shakespeare sonnets. I like that stuff. I'm a big reader. I like Walt Whitman. I like classic poetry, and
and you said
a little Tennyson now and again. But so sometimes I'll write a poem and then say, "Hey, this is a good lyric." I've got a little notebook journal like a lot of people do.
Yeah.
So I'll scratch something in there. Sometimes you read it later and you're like, "This is terrible. What was I thinking?"
Well, I had, in my former life, before I became an attorney, I was a creative writing teacher. And with junior high kids, And one of the things I did was I remember playing, was it The Who?
Love.
Childhood Dreams or Childhood Extraction, or something like that. Distractions of Childhood or something like that. And it was a real, rock instrumental. And so I asked the children, I said, okay, take a piece of paper and start jotting down whatever comes into your head in terms of words. So you're going to listen to the music, and what does the music tell you? Just keep adjectives and nouns and phrases, and keep writing and writing, writing. And then at the end of the playing the song, I would ask them to look at that list and say, so do you see a story in there? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. They would say, they're 12 and 13-year-olds. They were very excited. And I got the best stories from that.
I'm sure.
So I can see where music itself can force somebody to see the lyrics. So maybe
Sure.
even hearing another person's music could create lyrics for you. Does that ever happen?
I've done, to be honest, I've done only a little bit of, collaboration music, and a little bit with my longtime band that I had played with, guys I've been playing with since I was a freshman in college, and also my musical cohort, Jason Buell, from Easton, who you've seen me perform with quite a bit. We wrote some songs together, but it was more of a, hey, I have this, piece, and put a few lyrics on it, or finish something for the other. We did that for a while because when we were young, we were pretty tight, and we were playing out a lot. That's why I said before, my early songwriting came out of necessity. We had a band that played back then. Places wanted to hear a little bit of original music. I mean, I know those places still exist, but they're a little fewer and further between. Between you and me nowadays, people want to hear the classic, hits. And oddly, people often request, songs that you hear on the radio all the time, like now, So I don't know why you'd request that from a live musician, but it happens.
Yeah, but I know that Bob Dylan, he would always introduce new songs when he had a concert, and then
live before he put them on an album.
Yes, and sometimes the other way around. He'd make an album and then he'd put it in front of the audience in a concert. So, but listen, we're going to have to take a break here soon and hear your wonderful music and your wonderful lyrics. So this show is about the love of words, and you certainly do. You caress your words, you make them jump out and appeal, and I think it's so wonderful to listen to. I love your playing, but I also love you when you play and you sing the words. And I know in the past you've had some pretty vivid songs. And yet you've had some that are rather abstract, and people have to say, what was that about?
Yeah.
And I think it's great because you want people to think. You want people to enjoy. So thinking and enjoying are, two things that you give people, and I know we all appreciate it. So.
Thank you for those kind words. That's really nice. I'm always delighted to be here, talking to you about music.
Yeah. Well, you know what? My mother always said, it's easy to tell the truth. Very difficult to not tell the truth.
Yes.
Because we can remember the truth. Very hard to remember the lies.
Yes.
And for you, it's all true. So thank you, Dave Spagone, for appearing on my show once again. And we look forward to this wonderful performance. Thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla. Is one that I wrote sort of a long time ago. It's called Fullest Moon. I wrote it in my 20s, all right? I thought it made a decent poem. Full moon can't speak, a subtle ending to my lonely week. Old songs, cheap wine, Silver River is a friend of mine. Your time is money, what's fair is fair. Can't find examples of it anywhere. Big feather bed, now I'm not alone. It sure as hell beats sleeping on the cobblestones. Don't make promises, or you can lock yourself away. Foolish words will leave you stuck in yesterday. It's a tragedy if you don't back up what you say. Now you got the nerve to look away from me. The meaning here eludes you once again. Open your mouth, you lose another friend. Is it really worth the energy we spend? Ooh, the energy we spend. You won't cry, you never weep. Don't wanna jeopardize your beauty sleep. I'm sad because I've tried. Your twisted logic makes me want to run and hide. But overall, I can't complain. I'm like the wind upon the weather vane. I'll be down by the water and I'll call the tune. I believe tonight may be the fullest moon. Don't make promises or you can lock yourself away. Foolish words will leave you stuck in yesterday. It's a tragedy when you don't back up what you say. Now you got the nerve to look away from me. The meaning here eludes me once again. Open your mouth and lose another friend. Is it really worth the energy we spend? Ooh, the energy we spend. All right. So my this next song that I'm gonna do is one that I wrote. That I mentioned to Priscilla that a lot of my songs were written out of necessity for my working band that was playing in clubs and stuff at the time. So this is another one from yesteryear. I wrote this one quite a while back. It's an odd little song. I call it infotainment. That's entertainment, the way you practice in your room. It's my education to watch you execute your moves. So temperamental and a little quick to second guess. Can you spare a moment to complete my homelessness? Can you spare a pillow while I sleep beneath this trash? All my funds, they dried up when my old guitar got smashed. Look at my cardboard house, it's the worst you've ever seen. I used to look so freaky, like every day was Halloween. But now I somewhat changed my ways, now that the landlord chased me down. She took my cardboard house, stomping into the ground. Yeah. That's entertainment. If it leaves you broken, it's a shame. Was it worth the anguish and all the energy it takes? So indecisive and a little quick to second guess. Can you spare $1 to complete my shiftlessness? Can you spare a blanket or a piece of rug? All my funds, they dried up when I refused to sell them drugs. Oh, look at my brand new house. It's a box from a washing machine. I used to look so freaky, didn't have to dress up on Halloween. But now I somewhat changed my ways, now that the landlord tracked me down. She took my cardboard house, yeah, stomped it into the ground, yeah. True story. Okay, so this next song is one that I wrote fairly recently. It's about a couple of different things at the same time. It's a little bit about nasty pollution that you see just around your from all around. It's a little bit about pollution, but it's also about sort of going back in time, and I think the idea was to maybe, see loved ones who, might not be here anymore, and like if there was a way to talk to them again. That's sort of what I thought of when I wrote this song. Strumming my guitar by the banks of this old polluted river, get my inspiration singing songs to all the garbage floating by. People used to come from miles around for bands and picnics by the river. But ain't no money for picnics, or money for time, or magic to stem the way time flies. I'm strumming my guitar on the banks of this old forgotten river, wishing that I had an opportunity to travel back in time. Not 100 years, but maybe just a few, when the water here was crystal clear and blue. Maybe I would have another chance to talk with you once again. Strumming my guitar by the banks of this old neglected river, I can't see my reflection on the surface of the water, murky brown. People used to say you were lucky if you lived beside the river. But I can't recall the last time that I've seen one of those people in this town. I'm strumming my guitar by the banks of this old polluted river. 'Cause singing little songs about Mother Nature might be coming back around. Not in 100 years, but maybe just a few. And the water might turn back to clear and blue. Maybe I would get another chance to talk with you once again. Once again. My next number, my next song, this is one that, I'll sing clearly. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's a little bit about, sore subject. If you're an aging rock and roller, this is a little bit about that, okay? Written a couple of years ago, tops. You beat me on the draw 'cause I didn't have a chance to move. And it makes me realize that I'll never be as fast as you. Go ahead and tell me that I'm finished at last. See, my rock and roll is just a thing of the past. But whatever you do, honey, don't you disapprove. You can hold me up, but don't ever try to hold me down. And when my smoke break ends, I'm protected by a wall of sound. Go ahead and tell me what a loser I am. Say I'm going crazy and I'm too old to jam. But whatever you do, darling, don't you disapprove. The meaning of life is something that's so hard to find. Music is the answer to the questions I have on my mind. Go ahead and tell me that you'll sue me in court. See, I'm wasting precious time 'cause life is too short. But whatever you do, honey, don't you disapprove. I said, whatever you do, darling, don't you disapprove. Thanks, folks.
So Dana is joining us tonight to give us a glimpse of his many creative works, poetry works, but also he has a very interesting background in creative writing. He's written a novel in progress and a play, and he's been a reporter who's taught English in schools. He has a very, very varied background, and he loves the railroad. So welcome, Dana.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yes, and tell me a little. You were in the Tonkin Gulf in 1967.
Yes.
And is that where you wrote a lot of your poems?
No, but that's where I started. I was sitting on the old teak deck one day, and we had a break in all the action and everything that was going on, and it was lunchtime, so I just sitting there and had all these ideas going through my head, and I said, I got to start writing these down. And that was the beginning. I'd actually done some writing in elementary school even, and high school. My first play was in 6th grade because we were trying to do a play about some social history, social studies. And we had a committee, and the committee was just bogging down and not really getting it done. And somehow it hit my head. I said, listen, we're done working on this for now. So I'll take it home and finish it. And I did. First time, first play.
Wow. 6th grade. So you were 11 years old when all of this started.
That's how old I was?
Yes,
Okay.
you were.
I'm terrible with math, which is why I didn't become the nuclear physicist I dreamed to, but a writer instead.
Well, I think the choice was good, and the world has benefited from that choice.
I'm still interested in sciences. I follow them very, very closely. And sometimes I write about them, but I knew that with my deficiencies in math, physics would have been a disaster.
Okay, and so you were an editor for weekly and dailies. I know you worked for the Taunton Gazette and
Yes,
New
yeah.
Bedford
Standard Times.
Standard
yeah.
Times.
I was
and-
also the editor of New Bedford Magazine, which was a quarterly regional slick
Yes, New
paper
Bedford Magazine, right. And but then you were on the radio and you were a talk host.
Yeah, but before I was the talk host, I got into radio by being a news anchor.
I see.
It was interesting. I saw the ad, and my wife said, "Why don't you try for it?" I said, "Oh, I've never done that voice on air stuff before." And I said, "I don't know." And she said, "What's the worst that can happen?" I said, "I don't get the job." "Okay, I'll send a resume." And I got it. And
Well, tell me how you've had such a varied experiences in your life. How have they contributed to your poetry?
well, it's like the title of your show, words. It's all about words. It's all about using words. It's about putting them together. It's about, I'm in love with words. Often I say, I'm not really a poet, I'm a wordsmith. And, I just love tinkering with words and making stories. And then the other thing is, I'm a yarn spinner. My dad was a yarn spinner, and his father was a yarn spinner. So we're always telling tales.
So that's the Irish in you. And
Maybe, it
and
might
the
be.
English.
Yeah, it might be. It might
Yeah.
be, yes.
Well, so tell me, what has been your biggest delight if you look back on your life and all the different occupations that you've had and the experiences? What stands out?
It's doing things like this. Whenever I get together with other poets and writers, and we can share. I've published a lot, and I sat down. I worked for Seekonk Speedway, writing up the results of all their races every week. And after about the 3rd year, I sat down and figured out that I'd written 500,000 words about auto racing. So, I just love throwing these things together that make you see what's out there.
So have you written poems that incorporate the auto racing?
Yes, unfortunately, I didn't bring any today.
But you did bring
Shame on me.
But you did bring some from your Vietnam War era.
Yeah,
and,
some sea poems, some Vietnam, and some railroading.
And some railroading.
And then there's a couple of personals.
And I think the love of railroads comes because as children, we all loved them. In my day and your day, of course, it was just the little boys who got the trains. But Dad and son always liked to put them in the basement and watch, and go round and round.
I have a little more advantage than that.
You do.
When I was a kid, I was born up in Bangor, Maine, and we lived across the river in Brewer. And my mother worked in the Bangor, Maine offices of the Bangor and Aroostook Railroad.
Oh, wow.
So we were around them a lot. And there was 2 blocks up the street, a train track where the Maine Central would take a load of freight from Bangor down to Bucksport or from Bucksport up to Bangor, probably hauling a lot of paper from the paper mill down there.
Right, and interestingly enough, my kid brother, Freddie Almquist, graduated all of Reims, and went to Gorham State in Maine, and he ended up teaching in Bucksport, Maine, and Bangor is just 20 minutes away.
So you're familiar with the boot on the tombstone?
Yes, I'm very familiar. Yeah. So okay. So any words you might have for budding poets out there?
Put the words down and use as many as you can. Don't write too long. I mean, as many as you can is a variety. And above all, the major thing I can tell anybody who wants to write anything, read. Read everything you can get your hands on. You know, there was a library, Mrs. Morrison at the Children's Library in Dartmouth, and she just kept putting books in my hands. And so she was perhaps one of the first to make me a writer, because she always encouraged that. Read more, and oh, you write that? Oh, keep doing that.
What was her name?
Virginia Morrison.
Virginia Morrison. Sounds like an author herself.
Yes, well, her daughter wrote a history of Dartmouth that went all the way back into the Ice Ages and
Really?
talks about all the moraines and everything that fill the town.
So she didn't only nurture her daughter, she nurtured you and her students.
Oh, I just the other day on the internet, on Facebook, I saw somebody from town who just made mention of what she did for them. So yes, she was a stalwart.
Very special. We all have the ones that made a big difference in our lives, and you did too. So thank you so much, Dana, for coming. And now we're going to hear some of your poetry.
Yeah. If I could say one more thing,
Sure.
Another one who made a writer out of me, and I have to do this, Mr. Arthur Bennett, who was my English teacher my junior year. He taught us things about, he really focused on concrete, so you can prove everything, even if you're doing fiction. And, you know, I took that to heart, and his lessons have been with me ever since, as long as Mrs. Morrison's. And, you know, there are dozens of other people, but those are two very big highlights.
And you must, as a reader, you obviously have learned so much from the great writers. Faulkner, you know, and the great poets, Wordsworth. And
One of my first favorites was E.E. Cummings. I'm sorry he's run into this problem with his racist comments in some places, but I liked the way he wrote.
yes.
And
Me too.
then I started reading more, and basically going through a English Lit degree, I read a lot more.
When I was, before I became a lawyer and retired, but before that I spent 10 years teaching English, and the literature was often E.E. Cummings and haiku poetry, and I was dealing with 7th and 8th graders. So, yep. And those are and I think the word is, keep it simple, stupid.
One of my favorites, probably one of the greatest poems ever, Langston Hughes, Mother to Son.
Yes.
You know, I have friends who post things about Langston, and basically, there you go. And I always have to chime in and say, you're overlooking Mother to Son.
Yeah.
There's another one, Carl Shapiro. He was a poet laureate, World War II guy. Started writing while he was overseas in World War II, kind of like me. He wrote this poem, Buick. And Buick, it compares the Buick of the late 40s, early 50s to a sloop at sail in how it moves and stuff like that. And that is, it's forgotten. And, you know, Shapiro is kind of forgotten. Poor Carl.
Well,
But that poem,
it's not forgotten
really,
as long as it's written down and published, and people can, now today with the internet, people can access all kinds of wonderful poems and stories and novels and plays and movies and you name it. So we are privileged to have such access, don't you think?
Yes, Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dana, for coming, and we're going to be enjoying your poetry. And for all of you out there, thank you for joining us and viewing this wonderful show for the love of words. And we can tell that Dana Rowe has a real love of words. And so this is Priscilla Almquist-Olsen bidding you farewell. Until next time, be well.
First one I'm going to start with here is one of my train poems. And this is about kind of how we feel about ourselves when we're working in railroading. And you know, people really like to know what it is within a railroad, because you know, when I would ride that locomotive down the main line, people would just wave at us from every crossing or every backyard. So, you know, America, it has this innate sense of railroading because it's so much part of us. So let's go to The Elect. Black suit, silk tie, watch in hand, chain loops to vest like Golden Gate cables, tick, 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 ticking off the depot's last seconds. Cliff-like wall of steel and glass, empty platform, stretch away in perspective up the main track's grade to waiting great iron beast. Weathered eyes searching back from the cab seat meet those from rear of train, ancient linkage. Rattle of coal, hiss of steam, clang from firebox door. Click, 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 brake lever swings to charge the train line. Hiss of air in the Westinghouse valve as the backbone expands downgrade. The consist stretches firm. Steel knuckles clatter, grip, brief shudder alerts riders. Tick, tick, the moment becomes. Lantern swings the highball. Gloved hand edges the throttle. Air hiss, independent brake releases. Whistle screams the day. Woof, chuff, chuff, chuffle, 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 chuff, chuff, chuff. Man-tall drivers grapple the T-iron, spin, grip again, eyes turn to windows, scenery staggers backward, watch to pocket, clutch the car side grab iron, foot to step, swing aboard the vestibule, drop the trap, close the door, civilization rolls down the rails. Snorting iron steed reaches gallop, flies the transit sight, world rushes to the thoroughbred. Vapor barks at its ankles, engineman's eyes live a mile ahead on the parallel lines. Coach-bound conductor senses the flow, nods sagely in his soul, feeling the familiar oscillation, content in his counterpart's hand. As time and steam reel the miles, drawing to the night. These are the elect, iron men, cadre of flesh and steel. Okay, I hope you liked that train trip. It was good for me too. I was also a sailor, did my time in the Navy, and that's how I ended up over in Vietnam. But my family's been in sailing for a long time. My dad was a sailmaker. He was taught to be a sailmaker by his great-grandfather, so here I am. This one is called Spliced Lines. Wet canvas hangs slack, drying, drifting morning sun, neap tide, basin, a mirror. Sail rings loose upon the mast. Gaff has not been peaked. She drifts as her crew prepares. Old spars short of varnish, new oakum in pitch, now keeping the bilges dry. Tiller in hand shows purpose. Soon they'll be close-hauled, outbound. Okay, so now you've heard the two themes that were mentioned. I'm going to do something a little purposeful, personal, and actually I kind of got inspired by reading Jack Kerouac's On the Road, and it came out this way. Gray wool. Gray wool, patent pumps at the bar were you. Black silk tie by the stage was I. Mood promoted by a smoky tenor sax. Late, best time. Sextet softened by the hour. Guitar, stand-up bass, drums, piano, trumpet. He stood, blowing my life through a rose-petaled dream. Growled and rattled, tuned and syncopated, nicotine vapors drifted the room. Watery scent of beer. The tumbler of Jack Daniels on the keyboard. Drifting sensibilities. Trumpet clarion for a change. Bass sang your readiness. My beer had warmed. Waitress stood, tired. Good reasons to stand near you and find a hello. Ah, and now we've made it to now. But this is not about then, it's about now. Welcome home. Say, citizen warrior, sword back to plowshares, decades stretched out behind you. Here is the phrase you're seeking. Welcome home, GI. Can't push those memories back. Waiting how long to hear them? Thanks for your service. Alternative. Poor replacement. Here's a hand clasp to your chest. What we never tell. Old warriors departing. If only they'd called you, coming off that plane. Welcome. Okay, in order to challenge myself, I got into writing haiku and tried to perfect it, which got me into doing some Zen poetry. And this is called Urban Koan 1. It's my first attempt at one of these. And a koan is just kind of a teaching riddle that they use, and there's not really any answer to the riddle, except finally coming through and understanding the philosophy within the question. And this actually happened while I was teaching. In a cosmic moment, Master Chwid said, "Waka, waka, waka." Urban Schnoid Raffi asked, "What is waka, waka, waka?" "Indubitably," said Master Chwid. "Indubitably?" asked Raffi. "What is that?" "Woo." "Nothing. Unask the question," said Master Chwid. "Because he liked it better than moo." "Nothing. Unask the question." In the computer lab, Urban Schnoid Jordan asked, "Do we have to do this assignment?" Master Chwid replied, "Indubitably." "What is indubitably?" said Jordan. "Raffi," said the master. "What is Raffi?" asked Jordan. Master Chwid replied, "Woo." Master and Jordan were walking through the cafeteria. Raffi and friends were in lively adolescent debate. He stopped Jordan in front of the table. He held his index finger up close to Jordan's eyes. "Raffi," said Chwid. "Waka, waka, waka." "Indubitably," said Raffi. Okay, now this does go by. Now, it was written probably around 2003, 2004 when I came back to writing poetry a lot, but it really refers to my high school days. Offshore wind. It's 80 degrees, lying awake, sunrise, phone rings, he knows her voice. It's up East Beach, 5-footers, offshore wind. The 52 Woody, loading Dewey Weber and Duke Kahanamoku longboards, column shift, fuzzy dice, flathead V8. Her door flies open, human cannonball, screen slams, blue bikini, auburn hair, flip-flops, Hobie t-shirt, Foster Grants, California girls on the AM radio. Breathing in ear, clasped so tight that she has to shift. Mirage puddles in roadway, green trees overhead, flying down beach-bound back roads, shoulder bounces her cheek, dice bounding from mirror, old wagon rocks, groans, boards rattle the rear window, right hand turn, sky opens up, eyes blink the brilliance, a strip of desert sand, blue of ocean, screams of gulls, clam shack ahead. On the roof, there's a band, no rules, no shot, no shirt, no shoes, dozen clam cakes, vinegar and salt, hires root beer and a frap, a bar of board wax. She rubs on the oil, splash the board down, paddle outside, and watch as the sets roll in. It's a day in the lot for the fuzzy diced Woody as they drop down the face of the wave. Okay, here's another one, kind of an inspiration here. And I got to thank Jerry Jeff Walker for his song, Railroad Lady. I had just finished listening to that song as I was on a tag group where I was tagged to write a poem by a good friend who knows I'm a railroad freak. Hollers the whistle. So, let's holler the whistle. I may actually break into song, and I'm a terrible singer, but I can't help it because I hear the song while I'm reading this, but it's all my own words, not Jerry's. The moon's on the prairie, arousing the ferry. The clock in the parlors struck 3. No one is listening to the sound of the pistons and the roar on the rails running free. Engineer's epistle, he hollers the whistle and eases the throttle a click. Behind all the boxcars, the tankers and mail cars, caboose is completing the trick. The conductor is sweeping, and the brakeman is sleeping, and the coffee pot rattles the stove. Paperwork needs some doing. Chamber pot needs some gluing, and that hole in the palm of the glove. Highballer sets the broom down, settles back, takes a look round. His watch says it's 3:43. The brakeman is snoring, but the trip isn't boring. This life's been the right place to be. Okay. Oh, gee, look at what we got next. This is the story of a locomotive, one that I worked on at Cape Cod Central Railroad, and she had a tendency to rock. She was an old Alco RX-3, and she was the only engine at the railroad that had a name. She was Lulubelle. At any rate, so the first time I rode in Lulubelle, I was just going along for a shakedown ride to get used to the tracks, and I realized all these things, and I also heard it making a repetitive sound, da-da-da, 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 and I went, there's my meter. And so I wrote it in a form called a terzinel. Terzinel, yeah. It's called harmonic rock. And here we go. On Tuesday, we let's back up. On Tuesday, we ran Lulu Bell down to Sandwich with Andrew, our engineman. Karen was fireman. Old Alco to power out past the last yard switch. 120-ton diesel. You must hear her sing. At track speed, Lou rocked and then rolled with harmonics as Andrew pulled throttle while Karen called crossings. Out past Yarmouth's Y and the old rails play tricks. Swung west towards Boston, now gathering some speed. The tracks get Lou rocking, prancing and sashaying harmonics. The dining car's waitstaff getting ready to read, go yawing and swaying, the diner's soup flowing. West Barnstable Station picking up some more speed. We're bouncing from bulkheads, locomotives horn blowing, waltzing through Sandwich, people wave from the station. Galloping where the Cape Cod Canal's flowing. Good old Cape Central in a railway gyration. Dancing through Sandwich, photos shot from the station. On Tuesday, we ran Lulu Bell from Hyannis. Old Lulu at track speed in a pump handle kiss. Okay. Another theft. This one, I'm sure, you know sea fever? Okay, you'll recognize it as I read this because I really worked hard on this. I took sea fever out, John Masefield, the English poet, and I actually went to scan his meter so I could make sure I did the exact same meter on this. So this is change of tide. He has come down to the pier again, to a hail which can't be denied. Salt in his veins lends a living call as sunrise reflects in his eyes. As the tide turns and the light grows, he watches beneath custard clouds for the shape of a ship at the horizon's line where his skill set can be allowed. It could be a tug with a battened down barge which is headed down the Sound, or an eastern rigged dragger with a wooden hull for George's bank be bound. And under the planks, beneath his boots, the anxious swell rolls in. He is garbed to go in his trusty gear in whatever hull will host him. He recalls a typhoon off Tokyo Bay, spindrift hammering the bridge, mouth of the Songma, Tonkin Gulf, hot exchange with shoreside guns. Dashed with his cadre to bosun pipe shrills, setting sea detail for docking, curled in his rack, letter from home in whatever, curled in his rack, letter from home after mid-watch duties at helm. He has come down to the pier again, that hail which can't be denied, served and was served by the bounding main, now needs return again. Somewhere out there, an inbound boat must need an experienced hand. Without rise and fall of the heaving deck, his life is beyond his command.